The Companion Animals Amendment Control of Cats Bill 2025 is a straightforward and long overdue reform. It amends the Companion Animals Act 1998 and the Local Government Act 1993 to establish a clear duty on cat owners to keep their cats under control in the same way that dog owners are expected to control their animals, and to empower councils to make and enforce reasonable orders to prevent cats from escaping the property where they are kept. This bill is about responsibility, balance, and protecting our precious native animals from domestic cats that are allowed to roam. Roaming owned cats kill native birds, reptiles, and small mammals. Recent Australian research shows that each roaming pet cat kills on average about 186 animals per year, of which around 110 are native animals, including 40 reptiles, 38 birds, and 32 mammals. Scientists have documented that free-roaming cats kill more than 2,000 different species worldwide, including 347 species listed as threatened or endangered on the IUCN Red List. In Australia, cats kill more birds and mammals per square kilometre than anywhere else on Earth. They have fundamentally changed the ecology of our cities, our bushland, and our island. They are also far more likely to experience harm themselves. Roaming cats have much higher rates of car strikes, dog attacks, cat fights, and disease. A vet who operates in Sydney very recently wrote, quote, "As a vet, I see the feral or stray/unowned cats that are brought in for treatment, that are picked up by council. They are usually unhealthy, with high parasite burdens, internal worms, external flea, mites, often have bacterial or fungal infections and are carriers of chronic viruses, cat flu, feline immunodeficiency virus, feline leukemia virus. They are not living their best life, and they will not live their best life, even if they are neutered or released again. And they will still hunt and decimate our local wildlife and bird life. They are often highly stressed and fear aggressive and cannot be easily handled or readily tamed, and would not make good pets. Roaming cats are also the main domestic source of toxoplasmosis, a disease that infects about 1 in 5 Australians. It can cause miscarriages, blindness, and brain damage, and is estimated to cost the health and agriculture sectors around $6 billion every year. Responsible cat ownership is therefore also a matter of public health. Because many pet cats roam, become lost and reproduce uncontrolled, they also contribute to the population of feral cats. Australia's pet cat population is estimated at about 5.3 million, with around 71% able to roam. Additionally, in a radio tracking study in Adelaide among owners who believed their cats were inside at night, 39% were in fact outdoors. Each year, between 30,000 and 60,000 pet cats are surrendered or abandoned in New South Wales. Those animals that are abandoned unlawfully end up breeding in the wild, adding to the state's estimated 1.5 to 3 million feral cats. Reducing the flow of owned cats into the feral population is one of the simplest, most humane ways to reduce the scale of lethal control programs in national parks and reserves. The evidence is clear. When owned cats are left to roam, they endanger wildlife, they endanger themselves, and they undermine the broader efforts of invasive species control programs in our cities and across the regions. Every year, free-roaming domestic cats in Australia kill an estimated 323 million native animals. In Sydney alone, roaming pet cats are estimated to have killed over 62 million of Sydney's native animals in 2024 alone. The research shows that some of Sydney's densest areas for cat-related wildlife deaths are Inner West, Central Coast and Sutherland Shire, but also include newer suburbs on the city fringe where urban bushland meets development. In these interface zones, roaming cats are having measurable impacts on populations of superb fairy wrens, skinks, bandicoots and ringtail possums, species that should be endemic to our neighbourhoods and backyards and thriving. In the Inner West, there are approximately 36,400 registered cats, and the estimate of native animals killed by those roaming cats is 2.2 million for the year. In the Central Coast, the estimate is 1.7 million native animals killed, and in Sutherland Shire, about 1.4 million native animals killed. Cats are responsible for the extinction of at least 27 native species and continue to threaten 120 others. The scientific evidence is irrefutable. Cats are among the most destructive invasive predators in Australia. Yet here in New South Wales, our laws just have not caught up with the evidence or with community expectations. Under the current Companion Animals Act, councils are effectively prohibited from introducing enforceable cat containment or curfews. The result is that responsible cat owners who already keep their pets safely at home are being let down. And councils trying to protect wildlife and neighbourhood amenity are being left without legal tools they need to act. There has been a quiet cultural shift in how people think about cat ownership. Surveys by the Biodiversity Council and RSPCA show that the majority of cat owners now keep their cats fully contained or are planning to do so. Containment is becoming the social norm in the same way that dog leashing and microchipping became standard practice a generation ago. The public overwhelmingly supports change. A 2024 Biodiversity Council survey found that 2/3 of respondents, that was 66%, support laws requiring cat owners to keep their cats contained to their property. This is not a niche or controversial issue. The evidence is clear, and so is the community will. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the extraordinary work of the organisations, experts and local councils who have carried this issue for so many years and have built the foundation that allows this reform to happen today. The evidence in this second read is largely based on the work of hundreds of people across dozens of groups, so it's only right to acknowledge them here. RSPCA New South Wales has been one of the most consistent and credible voices calling for mandatory cat containment of owned cats. They told the parliamentary inquiry that containment is essential for both cat welfare and biodiversity, noting that contained cats live longer, suffer fewer injuries, and are far less likely to become lost or contribute to the feral cat population. They reminded us that this is not just about protecting wildlife. It is also about protecting the cats themselves. Their evidence showed that free-roaming cats face much higher risks of trauma, disease and early death, and that toxoplasmosis, a disease spread by cat faeces, infects around 1 in 5 Australians and costs our health and agricultural sectors approximately $6 billion every year. RSPCA New South Wales also emphasised that mandatory containment must be paired with public education, affordable desexing and clear guidance for owners to make the transition fairly and effectively. The Biodiversity Council has provided the essential scientific backbone for this reform. Their research shows that pet cats in Australia kill an estimated 323 million native animals every year, most of them in urban and peri-urban areas. They have demonstrated that simple containment measures, keeping cats indoors or in secure outdoor enclosures, dramatically reduce mortality rates for native birds, reptiles and mammals. The Council has made it clear that New South Wales lags behind every other jurisdiction, and that containment is one of the simplest, most effective conservation actions available to households. Their public education campaigns have helped to reframe cat containment as an act of care and environmental responsibility rather than restriction, because that's what it is. The Invasive Species Council has been tireless in its advocacy, bridging the gap between scientific research and policy reform. Its work has revealed the shocking scale of predation occurring right here in our community. communities. According to their analysis, roaming pet cats in Sydney alone kill more than 62 native animals every year. In the inner west, they kill around 2.2 million, on the central coast 1.7 million, and in the Sutherland Shire about 1.4 million native animals each year. These numbers are alarming. The Council has described them as not statistics, but as preventable losses, wildlife that could be saved through responsible ownership and enforceable containment. They have reminded us that without legal reform, local governments and communities are powerless to stop these losses from continuing. Local Government New South Wales has also shown strong and principled leadership. Councils across the state have made it clear that they are ready and willing to act, but they have been denied the legal tools to do so. Local Government New South Wales has called for urgent amendment of the Companion Animals Act 1998 to enable councils to introduce and enforce containment orders, to manage nuisance complaints and to protect local wildlife. They have also called for funding support to educate communities and to help councils implement new responsibilities fairly and effectively. Councils are on the front line of this issue. They see the daily impacts, injured wildlife, nuisance complaints, and the frustration of responsible pet owners who do the right thing while some others do not. WIRES and the New South Wales Wildlife Council have provided deeply sobering evidence about the consequences of inaction. Every year, their members and volunteers care for tens of thousands of native animals injured or killed by domestic and roaming cats. WIRES alone records more than 8,000 admissions a year directly attributable to cat attack. These animals, such as bandicoots, ringtail possum, blue-tongued lizards and small birds that should be thriving in our suburbs and towns. The organisation said that most of these animals either die from the initial trauma or later infection, placing an enormous and preventable burden on volunteer carers. WIRES supported mandatory cat containment combined with public education and affordable desexing as the most effective way to reduce this toll and prevent suffering at the source. The New South Wales Wildlife Council, which represents more than 30 licensed wildlife rehabilitation groups, reported that domestic and feral cats are a leading cause of wildlife injury and mortality across the state. It told the committee that wildlife rehabilitators are stretched beyond capacity because of the number of animals attacked by roaming cats. The council called for 24-hour containment of owned cats, compulsory desexing, and amendments to the Companion Animal Act 1998, so that councils can enforce containment orders. It explained that even when victims are rescued, most do die from infection, and that stronger containment laws are therefore needed to prevent attacks rather than respond to them. The Australian Veterinary Association and the Animal Welfare League have both reinforced that containment benefits the cats as much as it does the wildlife. The AVA's evidence showed that contained cats live 2 to 3 years longer on average than roaming cats, experience fewer traumatic injuries and have lower rates of infectious diseases like FIV. The Animal Welfare League highlighted that a large proportion of the tens of thousands of cats surrendered to pounds or abandoned each year in New South Wales were once owned, and that uncontrolled breeding contributes directly to feral cat populations. Both organisations have called for containment laws with reasonable transition periods and support for vulnerable people, such as those experiencing homelessness or domestic violence, to ensure that reforms are fair and humane. The Taronga Conservation Society Australia and the National Parks Association of New South Wales and the Centre for Invasive Species Solution have provided national and global context. Taronga Conservation Society Australia submitted that cat predation is a primary threat to many ground-dwelling mammals and reptiles in both urban and regional New South Wales. It said that domestic cat containment must complement national feral cat control efforts, describing urban containment as a cornerstone of invasive species prevention. Taronga recommended that cat management policy be integrated into the state's biodiversity and threatened species strategies so that domestic animal management supports conservation outcomes on a on public and private land. The National Parks Association told the committee that domestic cat containment is the missing piece in New South Wales' approach to invasive species control. It explained that ongoing eradication and control programs targeting feral cats, foxes and pigs inside national parks are completely undermined when own cats are allowed to roam and interbreed. The association urged the government to introduce statewide legislation enabling councils to enforce cat containment and to deliver public education campaigns highlighting the ecological value of native urban wildlife. The Centre for Invasive Species Solution provided scientific evidence showing that cats are among the most destructive invasive predators on Earth. The Centre noted that cats have been responsible for at least 27 Australian species extinction and have affected more than 2,000 species globally. It told the committee that domestic cats contribute to the wider invasive species problem by augmenting feral populations and continuing predation in peri-urban areas, and that mandatory containment of owned cats is necessary prevention measure consistent with national invasive species objectives. They have each reminded us that cats are among the most destructive invasive predators on Earth, responsible for at least 27 native species extinction in Australia and over 2,000 species affected globally. They have highlighted that cat predation has fundamentally altered the ecology of many Australian ecosystems and that addressing domestic and feral cat populations is central to any credible biodiversity or invasive species strategy. These organisations have not only supplied the evidence, they've built the movement that has brought us here. They have educated the public, engaged councils, informed Parliament, and translated science into action. They have worked with compassion, integrity, persistence, and radical patience. They have shown that containment is not a punishment, it is a community responsibility. Their work has normalised cat containment as the social expectation, just as dog leashing, microchipping, and desexing became norms a generation ago. I also want to acknowledge the many local councils that have already acted or advocated for change. Hornsby Shire Council, Queanbeyan and Palerang Regional Council, Blue Mountain City Council, Tweed Shire Council, Inner West Council, Parramatta City Council and the City of Ryde have all taken leadership positions, adopting motions in support of enforceable cat containment or establishing education and compliance programs. That is not an exhaustive list. Councils like Queanbeyan and Palerang have already introduced progressive containment policies that will make containment compulsory for new cats in coming years. Hornsby and Blue Mountains councils have run successful local campaigns promoting responsible ownership, and Tweed and Inner West councils have been strong advocates for state-level reform. Across the state, councillors and community volunteers have worked together to find humane and practical solutions to a problem that successive governments have ignored. This bill is the product of that collective effort. It reflects the evidence of our leading animal welfare organisations, conservation scientists, veterinary professionals, wildlife rescuers and local governments. It carries with it the moral authority of thousands of volunteers and community members who care deeply about their pets, their local wildlife and the future of our shared environment. It stands on the shoulders of people who have been doing the hard work of reform for years, people who have made the case that responsible ownership and environmental protection are not in conflict, but go hand in hand. New South Wales is now the only state in Australia that has not acted to reform broken containment laws for cats. In Victoria, more than 50% of councils have introduced some form of cat containment under the Domestic Animals Act 1994. In the ACT, cat containment is mandatory across Canberra and penalties reach $1,870 for breaches. In South Australia, Queensland and Tasmania, councils can already introduce enforceable cat containment through local bylaws. The announcement by Western Australian Government last month that it will amend the Cat Act so that councils can make and enforce laws requiring pet cats to be contained, managed under local laws, has left us here in New South Wales a laggard on the containment on this continent. So this is not radical reform. It is simply bringing New South Wales into line with every other state and territory. In communities that have introduced containment, the results have been immediate. Canberra's containment suburbs report fewer complaints, healthier cats, and increased sightings of small native birds. Hornsby and Queanbeyan and Palerang councils, which have implemented local awareness programs, have recorded strong compliance and community pride in protecting wildlife. The bill before us today does 4 key things. It creates a general duty of containment. The bill introduces a new Section 29A into the Companion Animals Act that establishes a clear legal duty for cat owners to keep their animals under control. It requires owners to take all reasonable precautions to prevent their cats from escaping from the property on which they are kept. This duty reflects a principle that owning cats carries a responsibility, not only for the animal's welfare, but also for the protection of wildlife and community amenity. The provision makes it an offence to intentionally release a cat from a property unless the cat is under effective control of a competent person. By codifying this obligation, the bill closes a long-standing gap in the companion animals regulatory framework and brings expectations for cat ownership into line with those that already apply to dogs. It also establishes penalties that are fair and proportionate. The bill sets out a graduated penalty structure that increases with repeated non-compliance. A first offence attracts a penalty of 0.1 penalty units. That's about $11 at current values, reflecting that initial enforcement will focus on education and awareness. A second offence attracts 3 penalty units, or roughly $330. And a third or subsequent offence attracts 8 penalty units, which is $880. This scaling provides a fair and proportionate response to repeated breaches while allowing time for owners to adjust their behaviour. The model is designed to prioritise education before punishment, supporting a culture of responsible ownership rather than relying on a punitive enforcement alone. The bill also protects vulnerable people. It includes a statutory defence to ensure that the new offences do not unfairly penalise people who may be in crisis or experiencing disadvantage. It provides that a person is not guilty of an offence at the time of the alleged breach if they were experiencing homelessness or were subject to behaviour constituting domestic or family violence under the Crimes, Domestic Violence and Personal Violence Act. These provisions recognise that we know some people face circumstances that limit their ability to comply immediately with containment requirements and ensure that enforcement remains compassionate and proportionate. The bill amends the Local Government Act to give councils clear authority to issue and enforce orders that require the occupier of a property to take action to prevent a cat from escaping. If an order is ignored, the person may be prosecuted for failing to comply, with a maximum penalty of 8 penalty units eventually. These provisions give local governments the practical tools they have long sought and respond to nuisance and predation complaints, manage risks to wildlife and public amenity, and support consistent standards for responsible cat ownership across the state. The bill also provides staged containment, 12 months after assent for most provisions and 6 years for the full penalty regime to allow time for education and for cultural change to occur. This is a pragmatic approach that recognises varying personal circumstances while also addressing extreme risks of roaming cats. Allowing cats to roam freely has real and measurable consequences for wildlife, for neighbours and for cats themselves. The Commonwealth's most recent assessment of invasive species costs found that cats impose an estimated $18.7 billion in economic losses between 1960 and 2022, more than any other introduced animal in Australia. Implementing containment for owned cats is one of the cheapest, most effective prevention measures available. In the context of broader invasive species control programs, from feral horse management in the Alps to pig, fox and deer programs across regional New South Wales, it is inconsistent and indefensible that we have no enforcement framework for domestic cats, one of the most significant invasive predators in Australia. Responsible cat ownership must be part of our invasive species strategy. It is one of the most effective, humane and affordable interventions we can make to protect wildlife. The New South Wales community is ready for this change. Local governments are ready, and our precious native species have been suffering, while obstructionists amongst us have stopped us from acting to protect them. The only thing that's missing is legislative action. The government is reviewing the Companion Animals Act, and that work should continue. But this reform is simple, supported and urgent. There is no reason to delay it further. This is a narrow practical measure that will deliver immediate benefits for communities, councils, the environment and even cats. I urge all members to support this bill. It is an invitation. This is not a partisan issue. It is about responsibility, coexistence and care, values that we all should share. The Companion Animals Amendment Control of Cats Bill 2025 is the product of years of advocacy by communities, councils and organisations that have seen firsthand the cost of inaction. It provides a fair and balanced framework for cat containment and responsible pet ownership. It aligns New South Wales with the rest of the country, protects wildlife and supports the people and organisations already doing this work on the ground. I say in earnest, this bill is an invitation to every member in this place to get this job done, to do the right thing for all of us here in New South Wales, and I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you very much.